Welcome back to Paranormal Roundtable. I'm your host, Josh Turner, and with me is my guest and, of course, my co-host, Barton Nunley. And we got a lot to talk about, so let's jump right back into it and let's continue. Thank you.
Yeah, I live right by Fort Hood, Killeen, some Fort Hood. So I could have. When you're going through things, and the only reason I said it was something spiritual is because I seen it manifest into this werewolf like being. I seen the brown one, and I seen a black all black male one. Yeah, my nephew witnessed it. Where we live, like a year later after I had my encounter, he seen something picking over the SUV. We're sitting in front of the picnic table in front of a mobile home, and our neighbor had an SUV, and something was peeking over the SUV. And my nephew's like, "I seen somebody there. They're trying to break it into their vehicle." So when we went around the vehicle, we seen something going through the yard real fast, and that house had gates, so it was going fast, So when we went back to our yard, we seen something. What seemed to be like crawling on fours, right? I was like, "Is that a dog?" We're looking at it. That's not a dog. That's too big to be a dog. Then we're looking at it, and I said, "Is that a deer?" I was like, "That's no deer. What the hell is that?" We're talking to each other, me and my nephew. The next thing you know, he stands up, boom, and it was right by the light pole. There's a light pole there with a light. So it stood up, and it took off running. So as it was running, we took off running on the opposite side of the street. And the streets within the mobile home park is not that far apart from each other. It's just the length of the mobile homes in between. So I'll say like maybe 40 yards, 80, I don't know how many yards, like 40, 50 yards, not even 40, 50 yards in between. So I seen that brown one take off to the left. But underneath the tree, you could see something huge there, and it was, I believe, the owl. It was an owl or whatever it was. It was just huge. It was black, and it looked at us, and it started running down the street, and it was massive. It was huge. I would say, no, I would tell everybody as tall as it was. I would say 9 to 10 feet tall, and he was humongous. It was nothing but muscle, And that's why at one point in time, I thought it was something real. Like it was like, a werewolf, or what people call a dog man. That's what I thought. But what started happening after that, I had the encounter with the 6, with those 2. And then there was another one at the park where I was sitting on a park bench, and it broke a oak tree limb, a huge oak tree limb. And when the oak tree limb broke and it landed behind me and my nephew were there at the park. It landed right there beside me, and he's looking at me, and I'm looking at it. And I seen it was that brown one, right? It's looking at me, and I'm looking at it, and it takes off running into the creek, and then it goes back into the park and runs towards the woods where I had the encounter with the 6 dog man. And it ran that way, right? And I was like, "Man, am I losing my mind? Is this something real?" And that's why I started thinking it was something real, right? So when I started thinking it was something real, that's when I started getting spiritually attacked by an unseen force. That's when I believed it was a werewolf or something in that nature, that I started getting attacked by an unseen force, where I could be at the park training my senses. Next thing you know, I would hear like something running behind me, and by the time I'm fixing to turn around, I get hit. Fly 4 or 5 feet, tumble the road. When I stand up with my guards up, ready to fight, there's nothing there. I got dropped like that so many times that I was fighting spiritually. I had to fight spiritually, because then he wasn't even showing me a form or anything. He was just attacking me, And I believe, because I believed it to be, like I said, a werewolf, But then later on, people talking about dog man. But I believing it was like a werewolf, I was believing in it. So then it started attacking me demonically, right? And invisibly. So I couldn't see it. So that's when I had to figure out how to handle it, because I was praying to God, and things were still happening to me, And it was like a constant battle there at Elms Grove. where they would come to my house, and I was thinking banging on the walls, running the roofs. They would be going into my house, kicking in the door in, opening up the sliding door, even though I had a lock. And they were taking different forms. They were taking the forms of this shadow people and stuff like that. But luckily, I found a solution. The opening that I had was that I had some unforgiveness, like Brother George was saying. I had unforgiveness for a gentleman that had a bad experience when I was growing up. The threat in my life, I had never forgiven that man. I had a lot of hatred towards this man, but I forgave him that day. Once I forgave that man, it's like I started feeling a change in me, a good change. That day that I forgave, truthfully, because I was trying to find out what opening do I have that these things a lot are attacking me, So I forgave. The day that I forgave, they manifested in my room, and they talked to me telepathically, right? Because, like I said, they can try to control your mind. So they started showing me an image of where they come from. They were showing me where they came from. They were showing me they come from Sinai. They were showing me all these people that were tortured, where the flesh will go off and come back on. And then, I was back in my room, and I could still see them standing in front of me. And this is what they told me. They told me they wanted me to do something for them. Said, if you do this for us, you don't have to worry about this. This is what they told me. If you don't do this for us, then we're going to come after your family members. We're going to come after your son and your family members. But you got to do this. And what they wanted me to do is to take my life. You see? So I told them, I know within myself, I know God is a forgiving God. I asked that forgiveness. So I knew that was the opening. So I said, at this time, I take authority over you in Jesus' name. My son is protected by the Heavenly Father. And I said, I take authority over you. I'm not afraid of you. I tie, bind, and rebuke in Jesus' name. And when I said that, they took off. And ever since then, the things that were happening to me when I was getting hit, spiritually attacked, all those things kind of stopped in that nature because I took authority over them. But they're still around. They still manifest. They still show their form. They sometimes they come and try to make a loud growling sound outside my home just to see if they can lure me outside, But I stay inside the home. I have protection within the household, collect minerals. Of course, the number one protection is Jesus Christ. So there's other protection also that can protect your household, like, for example, selenite. The selenite brings your guardian angels, for those who don't know. Selenite can, if you have somebody that has crossed over spirits, your guardian angels will come, and angels can come and assist you with a piece of selenite.
Yeah, selenite is very good. It's a cleansing.
It's a cleansing. I keep the selenites on the windows because that's when I had moved into this house. They try to come in, they were banging on the wall. So I put the selenite, and then I carry black tourmaline. Black tourmaline wards off negative energies. So when y'all see in my videos sometimes that I'm wearing the necklaces, is all the stuff that I wear is for protection. And at the same time, when you hear that people's energy gets drained, well, the necklaces that I carry, they have energy in them. So if any energy is going to get drained, it's not going to be off of me. It's going to be off what I'm wearing, but it's for protection. That's what I wear it for. When I go out there and make those videos, they shoved me off a cliff, 2 cliffs. One there in Elms Grove. It was like a 42-foot drop. I was carrying groceries. I just heard the footsteps like I was hearing, and boom, they hit me. I grabbed a little tree, and I could see the creek. There was no water to land into the creek, so it was just going to hit the bed of the rock. But the tree bent enough that I was able to land safely in there. Then I got shoved off a cliff, a ridge in Shockridge Falls in Belton. I got shoved from way up on top. I tumbled all the way down like Humpty Dumpty. And I was all bruised up for about 3-4 months. I was in crutches, because they literally shoved me off the ridge. So it's kind of like I try to stay away from locations like that where there's like ridges and stuff like that, because that's what they do. You know, that they know I'm a spiritual threat because of the knowledge, the wisdom I have to share with whoever's interested in what I'm sharing, right? And they see me as a threat, so they're trying to take me out of the picture. But I still continue to do the works because, you know, I've been blessed numerous times by the Heavenly Father. I shouldn't be here with you all right now. I should have been gone numerous times, but I'm here, so I take that as a blessing that the Heavenly Father has. How should I say, works for me. So that's what I do, the works that I do. But initially, when I started doing that for the group, I had a group called Positive Spiritualist, was just as a, how should I say, for me to keep a track or a log, because in the military, we keep logs. So it was a me to keep a log of pictures of the things that I was going through, or I write down on a piece of paper what happened to me on the day. I'll put a time and a date, and, you know, just to keep a track of what was going on, because I was trying to figure out what I was going through, you know, what was happening to me. Like I said, people wouldn't understand till they go through it themselves. Then they'll understand.
Can I ask you a question, Abe? When you were a little boy, when you were a little bitty, and you were asked to stay with the curandera, and you do believe that she was a curandera and not a bruja, right?
Well, if I seen her healing the people, where she was casting out the demons that were afflicting the people, but a curandera is still a witch, some form of a witch, right? Whether it's white magic, black magic, a witch is a witch. So they are, in a sense of a way, open or in tune to that spiritual side. That's why, kind of like me, what I did is I didn't want to follow suit of anybody, whether it was a witch or whoever. You know, I followed suit of my experiences in life, and that's how I gained my wisdom and knowledge. But through my experiences, you know, like I said, I've had people. There's people that doubted me. Like I know there's a lot of people that doubt my pictures, but that's okay, because I've had people where there was this guy that had just barely come back from the Iraqi war, and I had told his brothers were 18 and 19. I told him not to go through the woods because there was, you know, this demonic thing there, you know, what I experienced. So his brother came, and he was drunk. It was like, he see me sitting on a picnic table, and he said, "Is your name Abe?" I said, "Yeah." And he said, "You're full of shit," you know? I said, "Really?" I said, "What you say? I don't even know who you are." I said, "I'm Chris's son, brother, you know?" He's like, "You're full of shit. You're just trying to scare my brothers." And he's like, take me to that place." I said, "Man, you're drunk. You don't want to go there right now. You're drunk." So I just came back from war. I'm not afraid what's out there, you know? And it's like, and he starts calling me all kinds of bad words. I said, "Man, I don't want to take you there. I don't want nothing happening to you." And so, "I don't believe you." And so, "Okay, I'll take you then." You know, so I took him, and I said, "Look, when we get there, I'm just going to sit by the swing set. I'm not going to go any further than the swing set." So he goes there, and he's there. And as soon as we get there, he's like, "I ain't afraid what's up in there." This is what you hear. You hear a woman laughing from inside the wood line, right? Like I said, they can mimic voices. So you hear a woman laughing out of there. And he's like, "I heard you." And he's looking at me. And he starts taking off his clothes. You know, like I said, he was drunk. He was in his boxers. So, "I'm going to go in there. I'm not afraid of you. I just came back from war, blah, blah, blah," you know. So he starts walking towards the wool line. And as soon as he gets by the edge of the wool line, it's kind of like he has his hands open, you know, like he's trying to go in there. And you start hearing him screaming. He starts screaming, you know. So when he turns around, he's bleeding. He's bleeding from the wrist, from every jugular place. He's bleeding from the ankles, from behind his knees, from the neck. He grabs his clothes and takes us running out of there. You know, he just runs, you know. So I start praying to our Father, you know, to protect me and also to protect him. So he takes us running. He comes back 2 weeks later. He knocks on my door, and he said, "I just want to apologize to you about, you know, what I said. You were just looking out for my brothers." You know, he said that whatever's there was very evil. And I said, "Why you say that it's very evil?" He said, "Because when I was in the Iraq War, there was numerous times that I tried to take my life, tried to commit suicide, And all the places that it made me bleed was the places I cut myself.
You know, the question I had, though, about when you were a little boy and you stayed with this woman and you were a little bitty, what was her purpose in keeping you? Do you have any idea why she wanted you in particular to stay there?
Man, you know what? I don't know what the purpose was. The only thing I knew, if there was a that I witnessed, you know, was to be like her little angel, seeing this unclean spirits leave the hut. No, because as children we're protected in some kind of way or another. The only thing I remember her was she would take care of me. She would feed me. She was always making me handmade corn tortillas with refried beans. That's all I remember eating. I would hardly eat any meat or nothing like it. It was just more like beans and corn tortilla. That's all I remember.
How long did you stay with her?
Like I said, I think it was like 6 months because, you know, I already forgotten my mother.
Jeez.
I had forgotten how my mom looked, you know?
So that was it was like a price that she exacted for healing your hermanos, your brother.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
So
that's
like 6 months of servitude for Abe.
Mm-hmm. And then this other baboso baracho that went into the woods, I mean...
Yeah.
I mean, you know, he was bleeding because, I mean, like these demons can open up physical wounds too, especially if you've hurt yourself. That's another thing people don't know. I mean, there was a girl that my brother used to date, and she would commit, what do you call it, self-harm, I guess, right? And she had like cuts on her arms and stuff. And when I first met her, she was all into this black man. Like she was into all this. So my brother was too. And they would do drugs and they were into Satanism, basically. My brother's born again. He's been saved and everything. And he's totally committed in the fight against that, you know, and he tries to warn people about it, you know, because he goes, it didn't do anything for me. He tells everybody, you know. But this girl, she was lying too. I could tell when we first met her. And she was trying to tell me, she goes, oh, I hurt myself, my cat. And all. And the next time I saw her, she made up some other excuse. And my friend Squid was standing there and we were like, what? Like, you could tell because we had a house that was really active. And so whenever she was in the house, the 2 or 3 times she'd come over, there would be activity. And so we told my brother, who we used to call him Diablo because that's his nickname because he was the devil, you know. We used to call him. He even has a devil tattooed on his arm and then another one on his chest. And he's wanted to get rid of him for years, but I mean that, you know, it's up to him. But so anyway, he's got that, you know. So I call him D for short. You know, we don't call him Diablo that much anymore because it's the devil. But anyway, we told D. I was like, dude, you got this girl who obviously is committing self-harm. And he goes, dude, I'm not with her no more. He said her arms started bleeding one night. And then there was like a picture in her room or something, and it caught on fire, like spontaneously. And I told him, I said, dude, don't you think that this is not something you should be dealing with? And I was like, I was going to tell you, we didn't want her back at the house because me and Scorpion and Squid had a bunch of weird stuff happen after she had come over one day, you know. So, and then the last time she'd come over, Willie, who passed away a couple of years ago, he was one of my really good friends. He lived in that house with us off and on for years. He ended up, when he passed away, he was living in Killeen too, ironically. Like you're talking about Killeen, like, and he was living in a house over there near the base, and he was telling me that there was activity going on there. And then when he went in for his surgery, he passed away of a stroke on the table. But he had brain cancer.
A lot of activity because it used to be native land, so there's a lot of activity over there.
It's very bad over there.
No, it's really, really bad. You know, since you're talking about pictures, I had a picture of me when I was, I guess, 4 years old in a suit. Right, this is after I came from the curandera. So I had this picture. I had lost the picture, and then I got given the picture later on. You know, so I barely had the picture for maybe like 4 years, and I started having this thing started happening in my house, right? And there, where my son was the age of I was in the picture, you know, he was like 4 or 5 years old. So at nighttime, I could feel somebody jumping on the bed, and then they're jumping on me, you know. So I thought it was my son playing in the bed at nighttime, and I'll go turn on the light. When I look, my son be asleep. I mean, what's going on, you know? So it was happening like that for a while, you know, where somebody jumping on my bed and I was getting hit by somebody. So I said, well, maybe it's just my imagination. So then one day,
it was like small,
me and my
like chiquito or poquito, like a little.
Yeah, he was still young at the time. Mm-hmm. But in my picture, I was like 4 years old, you know, in a suit. So I was talking to my nephew, you know, about the things that were happening, and as he's getting sleepy, I noticed me as in the picture sitting right beside my nephew. I'm like, what the hell is that? And my nephew seen it too, you know. And I said, oh, did you see that? I said, what did you see? I didn't want to see what he saw. So he said he's seeing me, and like in the picture sitting beside him. So I said, okay. So I want to go look at the picture. When I want to look at the picture frame, I could see something black moving within the picture. So it had to be something demonic within the picture that was taking my form. So I grabbed the picture and I lit up the pit and I burned the picture to get rid of it. And once I did that, all the things that were happening stopped in that nature.
What was jumping on you though at night? Was it like a small thing that mimicked the size of your child?
Yeah, it was mimicking me. Like they have the capabilities. But people don't understand that they can mimic. They can take anybody's form.
Oh, I know. Yeah.
Just like they can read your mind. There was one evening there in Elms Grove where my dogs were barking. That's, you know, let me know somebody's outside. So I'll go outside, and I'm looking at my neighbor's porch, and he's got the light on, and he's got a bench there, and I could see somebody standing on the bench or sitting on the bench. And I'm looking, it's like, it was a woman, right? So I go by the gate and I'm looking, you know, to get a closer look, and she stands up and walk down the steps of the porch, and she's looking at me, I'm looking at her. And then I start saying, there's no way in hell that could be, you know? And I'm looking and I start praying, you know? And she's smiling at me. And I'm like, no way in hell this could be her, you know? And the reason I was saying that is because it took the form of my mother. And the reason it couldn't be my mother is because my mother has been deceased since 1985. And this was like 2015. So it literally took her form, you know, of my mother to get me to try to get close to her to make it seem like it's her. But I knew it wasn't her. So I started praying against it. And it went down, and it started walking down the street towards that area where I had my encounter. So it's like, that was like one of the last straws that it's like, it took the form of my mother, you know. You know, they said that shapeshifter can do that, but, you know, to me, they're all come from the same source, you know, demonic beings. But it took the form of my mother, you know, and that was like, you know, I wish I could have had like the technology to be able to record that, you know, in her form. Like, there's no way in the world. And what was weird is, my mom was only like 30-something years old when she passed away, so she was young, and she took that form. It took the form of how she looked that day that she passed away. It was crazy, man.
What did your mother? Why did she pass away so young?
Well, it was a domestic thing that happened, but it was dealing with all the same things. Man, if I could get into that in detail, it's dealing with spiritual warfare. There was this man that he was he was in the military. He was a Vietnam vet. And my mom and my dad, they belonged to a prayer group, right, for the Catholic Church. So they would go pray for people that were sick or people that were being spiritually attacked. This man was supposedly being spiritually attacked by something. No, he was being spiritually attacked by something where that every time he closed his eyes to go to sleep, that he would see a man on a man in black on a black horse. And what was happening, he was attacking himself. He was beating himself up like he was being possessed, right? So they got the prayer group to go pray for this man, and that was happening to him, and supposedly they healed him, right? So this man was sick, and his wife was sick because she had cancer, and they volunteered me and my brother to go cut his grass. And he had like a little corral where he had goats. And my brother didn't want to go, and I said, well, you don't got that much grass anyways. I'll go cut it myself. You know, at that time I was in 5th grade. So that's what, 10 years old. So I go over there and I cut him the grass, and I could see him inside in his room asleep or laying down. And I already cut the grass, and I'm feeding the goats. As I'm feeding the goats, you know, I hear the gate open from the corral, and it's him. It's a man standing there, and he's looking at me, and he's got a smile on his face. Right? He's smiling at me, and he grabs a machete that's on the corner pole of the corral. Takes out the machete and he starts swinging it like real hard. That you could hear the from the machete. And he tells me, he starts laughing, and he's just laughing and laughing. And I said, what's so funny? And he said, you don't know who I am? I said, yeah. And I said his name, and he's laughing like crazy, you know. And he said, that's not who I am, you know. And I said, who are you? And he said, he was laughing. He said, because I tricked them all. He said, I tricked them all. He said, I'm a satanista. Right? Well, you know what that is. A satanist. That's what he's saying, a satanist. And he says, I can kill you right now. There's nothing anybody can do about it. And he's swinging the knife, and he's coming at me. When he's coming at me, I get a message from higher, you know. And I told him that I had a message for him. I said, what? A message for you. And he said, what's the message? I said, if you take another step forward, that your life on earth is going to be over. That's the message. So he tried to move forward, to take a step forward. He couldn't move. He tried to lift the machete. He couldn't lift the machete. So I was able to jump over the fence of the corral. And as I'm walking away, he can turn and look at me. And this is what he told me. Don't tell your parents what happened here today. They're not going to believe you. So I walked all the way home. And when I walked home, I told my mom and dad what had happened. And they went back, took me over there to confront him, and he lied, you know, so they didn't really believe either or. But that's the man that I forgave, that I had unforgiveness.
So here's the thing. I wanted to ask you a question, Martin. What Abe is talking about. When I lived in the house I lived in, we absolutely saw doppelgangers. We saw, like, I didn't see myself, but other people saw me, and I saw other people, and then we would find out that they weren't there. I've discussed that in the early episodes of my show, and that happened, you know, periodically. And everybody that I've brought on the show that's talked about living in that place or has house sit or whatever for me, you know, they've had issues. But so when you were living in those haunted houses, did anything like that ever happen to you, Martin?
Well, I never saw my own doppelganger, but like you, I've had other people come up to me and say, hey, I saw you in town today. And I'm like, I wasn't in town today. Oh, yeah, I saw you here and there or wherever. And I'm like, no. Well, they look just like you then. Spitting image, mirror image. I'm like, well, but I've never seen my own doppelganger.
No.
And hopefully I don't, because that's supposed to be a bad omen.
Yeah.
I've seen that happen numerous times around when I was growing up, where it would take the form of our brothers and sisters, and I'm playing with them thinking it's them, and then next thing you know, they're coming from somewhere else, and they're like, well, you was over here in the room playing with me right now. So we go to the room, there's nobody there, you know. They can take manifest, wow. Right? That's what it is. They can manifest to look like your brothers and sisters, and you're thinking it's them, you know. I think that's how they plant the negative seeds, and not just plant negative seeds, but also get people to believe in them, you know, thinking it's your brother or sister that they're playing with, and it's not even them. So that's how they get a little bit like a hold on you, you know. But they have those capabilities.
When this man with the machete, what happened? Was there anything that happened after that? Subsequent?
What happened after that? You know, that's the man I was trying to warn my mom and dad about. You know, that he was an evil person, and they wouldn't believe me. So he became like a godfather to one of my brothers and sisters, a godfather. And he was a cop, and I would tell him, don't trust him. And every time he caught me by myself, he would say all kinds of bad words to me. And he said that he could do this and this to me. He's always threatening me. But then when my mom would come, out of nowhere, because he would go visit my mom and my dad, he would pretend like he was a whole different person. But he was showing me his true character, right? So I would tell him, he said, you're just a kid. I said, I'm not going to be a kid all my life. He said, one day I'm going to grow up to be a man. How you're just a kid. You're going to do nothing, blah, blah, blah. So, I joined the military. I went to, I was in the Gulf War. I came back in my dress greens and I run into him. I'm at the stop sign at the light, and he's at the light. And I got to see him, and I remember all the times he would, insult me and threaten me. And I looked at him, and I gave him the look like, let's take care of business, And he did a U-turn and hauled ass, like he didn't want to face me as a man anymore, He took off. Next thing you know, later on that evening, because it's a small town, it's like I was told I had to leave town or else something bad was going to happen to me, They threatened me, so I'll call my immediate supervisor to let him know what was going on. So they told me that if they got like six or seven cops to surround me, told me if I don't leave my hometown. It was during the time of after Operation Desert Storm, that something bad was going to happen to me that night. I said, I'm not afraid. I said, I'm not afraid, if something's going to happen or not, So, I stayed there for a little bit, and then I left, and then they did an internal investigation, and they found out that there was a lot more involved in a lot of things because what happened to my mother. They found out about a insurance scam where people within the town, they were buying insurances. So, like the insurances, they would try to put not just the family member, but the whole family, all the children, right? So basically, that night that everything happened with my mother, we were all supposed to die because of an insurance scam. And I found this out through the military because I did an investigation of what happened over there, and there was an officer from that police department that told him what is with the real deal about everything. So they gave me a direct order not to go back to that town because they had a hit out for me, not just for me, for my brother and sister still, because, they still had those insurance claims. So, they told me they're going to give me time to move my brothers and sisters. So I moved all my brothers and sisters away from my hometown and brought them to Killeen. So everybody literally lives up here in Killeen.
So you were down in the Rio Grande Valley, you said, right?
Yes, in the Rio Grande Valley.
Yeah, a lot of those. There's a lot of black magic down there. Santa Muerta, a lot of stuff. Going from the border into Matamoros. Matamoros. I mean, I know it was back
Matamoros.
There was that guy that was killed. I don't know. I forgot his name. He was a white guy. He was a Walil. He was murdered by those guys that were in that cult, and it was weird. It was actually a Cuban guy that actually was in the head of that cult, but they were killing him, and they were dealing drugs, and then they killed him.
He was a football player, I think.
Yeah, his name was Kilgore or something like that. He was from He went to UT in Texas, University of Texas, and he was down there. And they murdered him. Yeah, and then it came out that they were in Mexico. Yeah, it came out that they were committing all kinds of human sacrifices, and they'd found other bodies too.
And that stuff still exists along the borders. People don't understand how bad it is. You got the killings from those people that are in cults, and then you got this open portals where there's demons or coming out because people are summoning them, so they're running loose over there. I'll give you another story from South Texas where down by San Manuel, there's a little, you go down, I can't remember the name of the highway, but it's going towards San Manuel. From Raymondville to San Manuel, there's a little rest area, and there's a dirt road because we have friends that lived out on the ranch. They were called, their last name was Davila. So we was going towards the ranch, and it was raining that day, and there was like a little swamp, right? And the water was going over the swamp, so we had to go. What happened is there was a big fish in the middle of the road, and we got off. I got all excited because I was going to catch a fish so we can make a little fish fry, you know. So I grabbed the fish with my hand, and my dad's there, and you know, all my brothers and sisters they're in the vehicle. Next thing you know, I hear a loud screech, and when I look to my left, there's a tree stump in the middle of the little swamp, and there's this, you know, how Brother Barr was talking about a humanoid. There was this man. How can I explain him? He looked like not like a person. The face, the body looked like a person, real skinny, but it was all dark, and it had wings like of a bat, but it was like the body was like of the wings, you know, like it was just that kind of texture all from head to toe, and you could see the claws where it was his feet on the tree stump. It was like what do you call it, crouching, or where he's just like you know how the cholos, how the cholos, how they sit down like that on the ground. Well, kind of like that, and he had claws claws on his hands and very sharp teeth, and his eyes were red, right? So it's making this screech noise at us, and we're looking at it, and we grab the figure, we start running towards the station wagon. You know, this is like in the 70s. This is like 70, 75, 76. So we start running, and it just goes up in the air real fast, like supersonic speed, you know, like. So we get in the vehicle, we start driving, and next thing you know, it comes from the air, and it starts scratching the top of the station wagon, you know, like you can hear it like the claws, and it's flying real fast, and it's hitting us, trying to hit us off the road. So we finally make it to the ranch, you know, and we get to the ranch, and we start telling. Name was Shui. We start telling him what happened, and he's like, he starts laughing, you know. I said, "Oh, that's the first time you ever seen him?" He said that he said it was a demon of the area. That's what he said. He said that there was a witch that lived in there nearby, and that she has summoned a demon. You know, that is a demon. You know, I don't know. All I know, it scratched the hell out of the top of the hood of the, and I believe to this day, what I understand, they've been still spotting it down there in the Rio Grande. I've seen a story where somebody said they've seen that creature in McAllen, or because McAllen is close to that area, so they spotted it within the city, flying in the air.
You know,
and then that's the same time frame when they started having when people were being attacked down in the Rio Grande by a big bird. They're saying that they were being scratched and attacked. That's the same time frame. Yes. Same time frame.
Ken Gerhard actually covered several of those sightings there. They're Brownsville, which is it's right across from Matamoros, and then you were talking about going to Reynoso. I had a weird thing happen to me in Reynoso. It didn't. I don't really count the things that happen if I can't say 100% like it happened because I was asleep. But this happened at Reynoso at the hotel. And there used to be a couple places that I would hang out at down in Mexico when you could still go there without, losing your cabeza. But, there were places that there was a place called, there was one club I used to hang out at, and it was called Gatos, El Gatos. It was right there in Matamoros. And then there was another place I used to hang out at, and I can't remember the name of it, but it was a kind of a rough dive bar that I would chill at over there in Reynoso. And if anybody doesn't know where that's at, like it's the Rio Grande Valley. It's basically encompasses Harlingen, Brownsville, Edinburgh, Weslaco, the city of McAllen, like you were saying. And there's a lot of weird stuff that goes on. Yeah.
There's the borders. The when you cross the border, you got Matamoros, and then you got Las Flores, and then you got Reynosa further up. Those are the entrances of the borders. Kind of like when you go to the one side of Texas where you got Piedras Negras and Ocuña. That's the borders.
Yeah, Ocuña is Del Rio, basically, is across from.
Yeah.
Piedras Negras is Eagle Pass, right?
Yeah, Eagle Pass.
Yeah, that's where a lot of the Lipan Apache were from. The Eagle Pass area. I believe there's even a casino there now. It's the only one in Texas, I believe. It's that. But anyway, when you're in Reynosa, I had a weird experience where a couple of the guys I was with, we hung out at this bar all night, and I got trashed. I mean, and like Baracho Teresos, man, I was I was like throwed, bro. And so I was asleep, and one of the guys that I was hanging out with, this guy Rob, I used to be friends with, he swore up and down that there was a Lechusa that came up to the window, man. And the other guy that we were hanging out with, he was messing around with this girl, and I was asleep on my bed. And there was like two beds and a pull-out bed. And he said that they all three of them claimed to have seen something scratching on the window. And when it moved away real quick, it just looked like black smoke. But the one guy claimed it looked like a Lechusa. Now, I didn't see it. So I never claimed that as a Lechusa experience because I was asleep. But they say that happened. And I've been in some situations where there were close calls, like where people that I was with saw something, but I didn't. So I don't really claim it. But I was in the vicinity. And that happened in Reynosa. And Reynosa, of course, there's a lot of weird ass stuff there too, man. Like these, a lot of bruja, this
brujeria, witchcraft. I think the guy's name was Kevin McElroy that you're talking about.
Was it McElroy? I thought it was Eric Kilgore.
Well, there was two. I think several people. Another guy I remember. I'm thinking it was Kevin McElroy or something that happened with that. With the cult leader that they had supposedly killed over there when they went hunting for him. But there's a lot of that. People don't understand how, how they're trying to protect the borders. There's a lot of things that happen within the borders, not just on that side, but on this side of the borders also. There's a lot of affiliations about a lot of things over there. That's why I moved. I didn't want to do with that. I remember I was 6 years old. I had gone to the corner store, and the corner store was in the same block. And as I had my loaf of bread, I was barefooted and shorts without a shirt because it's hot as hell down there in the valley. I was a kid, and I seen this big old limousine pull up to a house, and this guy got off they had shotguns and all kinds, and I just hear pa 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 pa. Right, and I'm standing there like frozen because what I just witnessed. And the guy lowered down the window and he's pointing a gun at me. And I'm just standing there, and this other guy tells him something. And he's pointing the gun at me, and I'm just looking at him, because I'm not like I guess I ain't gonna say freaking out. Like frozen, And he says, "You're lucky we don't kill kids." And he raised up the window, and they take off. But he was pointing the gun right at my head.
The guy's name was Mark Kilroy. That's who it was. We were both wrong.
Mark Kilroy.
Mark Kilroy, yeah.
Yeah. And then, that's how I grew up in that kind of environment, man. When there's things like that happening, there's deaths happening on both sides of the borders, especially children, man. A lot of children have died, along the border. That's why, it is important to keep the border secured, but at the same time, they need to put a stop to all these people that are in this cult that Mr. Turner's talking about, and they ain't doing that because a lot of people within our country that are affiliated with those cults. Those are the same cults that bring the children from across the border to give them to the people here in the United States. United States, all is what people want to call them pedophiles or part of the cults. What was it? They're dealing with the government, They're all affiliated. That's why they want the borders open to keep their supply and demand handy. You still hear where the children are disappearing.
Well, you're talking about Reynosa, and it's Hidalgo. It's right there
Hidalgo.
Yeah, and there was a story that I had gotten out of that Hidalgo area, which is this is interesting. And tell me, Barton and Abe, if you know, like Lauren Coleman says, the name game, and we were talking about that the other night, Barton. When you look at that, the Hidalgo, there was a story of a black dog, and it was like Pedra Negras, you know, like, but not like Piedras Negras, not like the city, but like it was the black dog. And I don't know if I pronounced it correctly, but there was a story that I had gotten out of there, and there was these people that were coming across from Reynoso, and they had been drinking. And this guy told me, he's like in his late 40s, early 50s now, but he told me this story months ago, and he said he was crossing the border from Reynoso, and he said that this guy had said, "Hey man, can you spare some change?" I'm sorry, he was going to Reynoso and he was walking across. Now this was like 20, 25 years ago, and he said that there was a guy. You know, a lot of times when you go across the border, especially I think that region is Tamaulipas. Is that the region?
Tamaulipas.
Yeah, Tamaulipas. It's very poor. It's a very poor region of Mexico. I believe it's Tamaulipas. But anyway, he's walking across. He says you always get these people that are beggars. You know, they're begging for change. And they sell chicle, you know, and things like that. And
chiclets, yeah.
And so he would go across, and this guy was chicle, you know, whatever. And he looked like a little boy. And then he got closer. He said, dude, he didn't look like a normal person. Almost looked like in the face. He looked deformed, almost like he was like a goblin. He goes, and I didn't want to be mean. He's like, I'm with my friend and my girlfriend and my friend's girlfriend. And he said, I didn't want to be rude and be like, this man is pretending to be a child. He's not really a child. He's a grown man. And so when he put some change in the guy's cup, the guy said, thank you, in a deep voice. He turned and looked, and he was like, I knew it wasn't a kid. And the guy was real skinny, and all he was wearing was like a pair of tattered shorts, like the kind you wear from like the 80s, you know. I know when we were kids, like in the 80s, I know you go play baseball or whatever, you had those little goofy shorts, and they were always like so short. You look back at the pictures, and you're like, I wore that? Because they're so
with the white
short.
stripes on the
white stripe, right? The little stripes on the side.
Shorts with the white stripes, yeah.
And you look at those, you're like, what is that? So this guy was wearing
and
like
the long socks with a striped socks.
With the two stripes at the top. Yeah.
Yeah.
Did you wear that, Barton? Was that your style?
Yeah, no.
So we all wore those clothes.
Barefooted.
Yeah, I was barefooted a lot as a kid. I can tell you that. But this guy, he was
like Daisy Dukes right there. No,
yeah, that's what the prelude to him. But this dude was dressed like that. Like he had a pair of rojos, red, right? You know, and he was like, he says the dude was wearing the shorts, and that's all he had on. He had no shoes. His feet were black from the, you know. So he says when he walks by, his friend said something to him. His friend says something like, man, F that dude, man. Like, you know. And so then that dude said something to him in Spanish. And the guy that he was with, he was a Mexicano, but he was a Tejano. Like he didn't speak any Spanish. And so my friend told him, he said, hey, you know, he goes, you shouldn't talk like that. He goes, what did he say? He says, I curse you and your mother. And he says, oh, okay. Oh, wow. So he's saying something back to me. He said, he turned like he was going to go back and do something. He said, don't mess with these people. You don't know who this guy is. So when they were coming back across the border, they had a little hotel that they had stayed at, and had been drinking. And like he said, they were real young. And he said that when they were in the hallway, there was this skinny, mangy looking black dog, and he was getting ice. And he said the dog was going around. He said this is what the dog was going around and looking on the second floor into the windows of the hotel rooms.
Oh,
and
wow.
He said he had a bad feeling that this dog wanted something from him. And so he just like bolted into his room. He said a few minutes later, the dog went by and was looking in the window. He goes, there's something out there. Oh, guys, gives me the chills. And that guy goes, I don't give a F. I'll go out there. I'll kick that dog. And he opened the door, and he said that he immediately sees this dog jump up and bite his friend in the arm, and the friend fell backwards. And he fell into the bed, and then this dog bolted out of the room and was gone. He said him and his girlfriend got up and they looked out the window and they see that guy, the beggar, the skinny beggar guy running down the stairs. And,
oh man!
Yeah, and so what was
he
so
took the form,
so what was insidious about it was this guy was like, you know, that he was practicing magic, you know, and he could come and go across the border at will because he could change into the black dog.
There's a certain kind of, you know how it's like a shapeshifter, but it's called something else in Spanish that
cadejo?
exists down
The
there.
cadejo?
Yeah, in the Rio Grande Valley.
Mm-hmm. And the cadejo is very popular legend down there. Well, here's what's crazy though, Abe and Barton. I'll tell both of you guys. The reason I said that is because of the name. There's a park in my hometown called Hidalgo, and we used to go and we would practice. It's where we used to practice baseball, and they had little league fields there too. And sometimes you would play on the fields, and sometimes you'd practice on the fields. And they're kind of run down now, but it was Hidalgo Park, and there was a legend of these things called the Hidalgo dogs, and it was of these mariachis that had sold their soul for this woman. This guy had sold his soul, and he talked his bandmates into doing it, and now they're black dogs, the cadejo. And I have people who've claimed to have seen these things.
I know. I'll tell you a story. I told you that my mom died to domestic violence. There was a lot of activities that were happening. We used to be migrants. We'd go work up north during the summer in the cotton, and up in Lubbock. Some of the events that were happening, for example, we live in a ranch, and we were seeing this Bigfoot-like creatures coming around the home by the wood line, and they would come and bang on the walls. You could see them, how big they were and everything. And the only thing we could do was pray because, to me, I felt they were demonic, so I would pray. There's some of the incidents that were happening, or you could see a man, a dark shadow man. And one time, my mom, she was talking to him, and it sounded like my grandfather. My grandfather was already deceased. And we were working in the field, and I asked Mom, who was that came to visit you? Was that Grandpa? And she just looked at me and I asked her, what do you want? He said that he told her that for her to be careful for the next couple of months because something bad might happen, for her to be careful. See, I think this guy that I was telling you about, that he had done a spell on her, because I remember before we had gone to work that summer, she was laying in bed and she couldn't get off of bed for about a week. She was like in a coma-like state. So the doctors came to the house to check her out, and they didn't know what was the matter with her, So this guy the one that I forgave, he had come to the house and he touched her one time with one finger, touched her, and she woke up after a week. The doctors couldn't figure out what was the matter with her. But it's kind of like my mom wasn't the same person anymore. It's like she would act different, So there was times that I feel that the negative attachments would jump on her, and she would act like a whole different person. And this putos negros, or they were huge. They looked like Bigfoots. They wasn't in the form of no dog man. They looked like Bigfoots. They would come around the home, and you could see the red eyes and stuff like that. And I was glad to leave that summer back home. But then when we got home, all this activity started happening over there too. So that day that everything happened, my mom was supposed to go to the drive-in with my dad, and next thing you know, we're at the house like 10:30. Before that day, she was sad, and she was just told us to come home because we were going to go to my cousin's house. So I came home early, and I was there, and there was this policeman came looking. They were looking to see where the woman of the house was, because I didn't know what was going on. It's kind of like I remember the truck came to the house, and the door opened, and I just seen the hand of my dad. He dropped the purse on the floor, and I said, Pop, and I heard him growl, like a growl. I heard a growl, and then I heard the station wagon. He got in the in the truck, and they took off. So like maybe 30 minutes later, all this cops come to our house looking for, asking for the woman of the house and all this. And I said, well, she was with him. We didn't know what was going on. So I got on my bike and I said, man, what's the matter? And they were looking for her. They said they couldn't find her and all this, So I prayed to God that day, and I prayed and I said, God, can you please take me to where my mom is, So I get on my bike, and in South Texas, it's pitch dark, so I'm going my little town, a small town, and there's dirt roads that go around the town. So I'm going on the dirt road. I could only see the white caliche, the white dirt road, and I'm riding on my 10 speed, and I'm riding through the dirt roads in the darkness. It's nothing but fields, you know, and go to this. I hit a main strip, like a road, so I take a right, and I'm riding there, and I get to this bridge. You know, I'm on this bridge, and when I'm walking my bike across the bridge, I hear a moan. You know, I'm hearing a moaning, like somebody's moaning. I'm like, man, what's that noise? You know, so I'm looking to where the moaning's coming from, you know, and it's like there's a light pole, and the light is on, and I start walking towards that moaning. As I'm walking towards the moaning, all of a sudden, I just see something tall, like 7 foot, 8 foot tall, standing right there by me. You know, when people talk about the Hat Man, well, I seen the top hat. He had that a cape on, and he had like reddish eyes. Just looking at me, I'm looking at him, and you know, I'm trying to stay strong with no fear, right? And I'm looking at him, and he literally glides. He's gliding off the air, coming straight at me, you know. So I get him on the 10 speed, and I'm driving. There's a road that goes back into town, and I can see the town, the lights, you know. So that's like maybe half a mile. So I'm riding on the 10 speed as fast as I can, and I see this man gliding in the air behind me, you know. So as I cross there's a little irrigation system that goes around the city. I cross the irrigation system, and I stop my bike, and I turn around. When I look, it's not that man, you know, gliding in the air anymore. It's this black dog with his tail pointing up in the air, and he's got red eyes, and it's looking at me. I'm looking at it, but it's not crossing the water. It goes underneath the city, or the town, should I say. I'm looking at it. It's looking at me, and it just turns around, and it leaps like great distance. Like it's not even running, it's leaping like very long distance. So it leaps. So I drive, ride the bicycle back home. And when I get home, my aunts are there, and they're like, get in the vehicle. You know, they're all scared. And my little sister, she was like 2 years old, and she's like, pick me up. I cannot walk on the ground, you know, like just what she said. She can't walk on the ground. So I picked her up, and, you know, we went to my aunt's house, and we're there, and I'm outside, you know, this still came my mom, and next thing you know, this storm comes through, and there's some cold ass water that comes, and there's lightning and thunder. And next thing you know, they say to go inside, so they had found her, right? So they said they found her, but she was dead, you know, and they needed somebody to ID the body, so I volunteered, and you know, they just showed me a picture. So following day, when all that happened, you know, it's like the seconds turn into minutes, 2 hours, and it's like, you know, it's all, you know, she's not there no more, you know. But we're all hurting and stuff, and I wanted to go back to the location so we can bless the area, you know. So I'll go talk to the priest, and the priest got in the vehicle because he was there the night before, you know, to where they found the body. So we went. He passed by the road. He stopped by the irrigation system. We crossed it, and we stopped by the bridge. And he said, "It's around here somewhere." Oh yes, and he just went right there. Her body was literally like maybe 25 feet away from me, where I stood. You know, and one of the things that I had forgotten that happened that day was there's another ranch that was further up, and the lights were flickering in the house. The lights were flickering in the house, and you could hear people laughing. But when my mom and my dad were in a prayer group in that location, those people, well, that's another story that I could talk about. But that's where they found my mom's body, and we blessed the area and everything. So I was right there. You know, that's why I believe in God 100%, because He took me. I prayed. That's what I prayed for me to go to the location, and I was right there. So that's why, you know, I always talk about always Maternal Love Foundation, to go into prayer, because He does exist. You know, He listened to my prayer. You know, whether my spirit is connected, you know, we're all connected spiritually, where my spirit through love is connected to hers. I was there, you know. Whether I interfered in something or not, I don't know. But that's how I felt, you know, especially when whatever was there had to chase me to get away from the location, you know.
And this happened up in Lubbock?
No, the incident that happened is after we came back from Lubbock. It happened in the Rio Grande Valley.
And did they ever catch the person that did it?
Yeah. Well, we know who did it.
Yeah.
It was, like I said, it was domestic violence.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I know you had said that, but I mean, it was, yeah.
Yeah, the person that did it was my dad.
Okay, folks, so that's going to do it for this episode. Tune into the next episode where I return with my guest and with Barton Nunley. And thank you for listening to PRT. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Good night.